Hey everyone, welcome back to Bowtech Live. Today is Target Tuesday. We've got a lot of big news coming off this weekend. The biggest piece of news is we have Mr. Tim "The Hammer" Gillingham live in studio today to talk about his great weekend. We haven't got to really talk to him since Reading. He's been a busy guy out there traveling pretty much every weekend. But we had to, it was about time we got him back in here, and it was after this weekend, it was the perfect time to get him back in here. So I encourage you, if you're watching, we're getting a lot of people just dropping in now. I see a lot of views coming in. So make sure you get your questions ready, because if you've joined us in the past, or if you know Tim Gillingham, he is a wealth of knowledge from everything Bowtech, everything tuning, everything target archery. He's the guy. So I definitely encourage you to get those questions in right now, because we have Tim live. So Tim, I appreciate you joining us. I know you just got back home from an IBO trip, so I know you're probably pretty tired, but I thank you for joining us.
Well, yeah, that heat down there in Indiana will knock anybody in the dirt.
Yeah, that's kind of my neck of the woods. You get the humidity. What was the humidity out there? 80-something%, I bet?
Way too much. Let's put it.
It makes it tough to breathe, doesn't it?
Plus, it was about 100 degrees, so that makes for really challenging conditions. And like some of the posts I put up on Facebook, it's amazing, that we have bows that we can just trust in all those conditions, and they don't move. I mean, that just, you can't say enough about the equipment in that respect.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit. I mean, last time we were able to speak was Reading. You came in off that great performance in the team event with Dave Stepp. So I think that was about the last time we talked. So what's been going on since then? I mean, I know you've been prepping, doing a lot of different disciplines, but kind of walk us through what's been going on in the hammers world.
Well, I'm not home a lot, like you said. So a lot of times, for me at work, it's just, it's get up, right? And so my archery is 5 o'clock to midnight, So I'm really been keying a lot on OPA. It's in my best event in archery, and I just absolutely love that format. And I've been really working at getting a setup together for it, and trying to fit in some yardage judging practice. And I made some changes on my bow at the first IBO, the first leg of the IBO, where I tried a 6-power scope. Didn't work out so well for me. But I'd never tried it under that type of lighting on that target. So went back to my old, 4-power, and I knew my setup was really good, and I made one little minor adjustment to my loop right before on Friday night, and the bow shot lights out. It's probably the easiest shooting bow I have for a speed bow. I'm shooting that Fanatic 3.0 at about 342 foot a second. Mm-hmm. And most would think that's a critical setup, but I mean, literally can hold that thing inside of an inch at 50 yards. It's crazy accurate.
And you were saying you don't get a lot of movement in it as far as the weather. Let's talk about, a lot of people maybe just getting into archery and may not understand what you're talking about, and understand that humidity and just your surroundings, the weather really affects what a bow can do. Yeah,
well, if you want to look back at a couple of years ago when I was shooting another brand, I had some major issues due just to heat. The flex guard that they had on the bow was actually changing in the temperature. Mm-hmm. And I mean, dramatically, to where I'd have to click my sight. I think on the second leg, I clicked it 16 clicks to the right on Sunday alone. So as it was getting warmer, it was actually changing the left to right impact point. And probably the best thing I have to say about these bows is I just don't move the sight.
Right.
And that is absolutely prerequisite if you're going to win at the pro level. I mean, these guys are good. Joby Shaw, man, he lit it up on Sunday. I'm telling you, he put me in a bad way with 4 to go. And
right.
And it just worked out. I made one key shot, and he made a couple mistakes, and I was able to capitalize on it. But you just can't have – you got to control the variables that you can control. Mm-hmm. You got to have, good quality strings. I mean, I'm a huge proponent of 452X. I put a few more strands in my cables, I guess, and build floating yokes on them just so they're beefier, just to handle the extra stresses that my draw link puts on them. Mm-hmm. A lot of people say I overkill it, but I think in the string department, I think I got speed to burn, so I'm not really worried about it. So
Obviously, it's not overkill if you're winning with it, right?
yeah, I mean, like last night, I had to make a decision. My string on my gig was getting a little rough, so I made the decision to off. But when you take the time to measure your strings and measure, everything, I just put two strings side by side, put the knock sets back on the same, the loop, the peep, everything. I put it back on the bow, and I think my tune was dead perfect, and I think I was a half a yard off on my sight tape. So when you have the tools to measure it, that's one thing I've learned. It took me quite a few years to get to where I was using a draw board so I could measure my draw length and go from bow to bow and not really see any glitches. You need a scale where you can measure. One of the big things that the top level guys do is really monitor draw length. I mean, draw length down 1/16 of an inch. And I'll actually, my wrist strap releases, I set them up to where I can micro adjust them on a 1032 screw thread. That way, if I get in a tournament, I feel short or feel long, I can adjust it there without having to change anything on the bow. So, but typically, when I'm setting my draw lengths, I'm doing it in my shooting machine or a draw board where I get the exact measurement from the throat of the grip to the end of the loop, and that's important when you're moving from, ASA to IBO to NFA events, because you can't necessarily shoot the same bow. Some guys do,
right?
But I really believe in specializing for the event. Like I said, these tournaments are won and lost by, I won by 2 points, right?
Mm-hmm.
4 points to go, I was 4 behind. So, I mean, you have to have everything optimized, for every event in order to give yourself, the best chance. So control the that you can control is what I say, because there's a lot of them that you can't.
Well, and you mentioned talking about all the different discipline, all the different styles of tournaments. So you go from winning at the ASA, then you go to Reading, then you go to IBO, then to Gator Cup. Do you use the same bow? If you do, you change your setup at all, or do you leave it alone?
Oh, that's 4 different bows for 4 different events. So in fact, I mean, and I'm not afraid. I mean, I have enough experience now that I'm not afraid to make an arrow change even at a tournament. At Gator Cup, when I got there, I was struggling a little bit in practice, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And, I'm thinking maybe it was a speed issue, so I went to the Lancaster trailer, got some 340 Pierce Tours, and built me a set. That evening, went over to one of my staff shooters' house, tuned them all in, and I shot them that weekend. Well, while I was shooting them in, I realized I forgot to tighten the windage unit on my sight, so that was probably the problem. But you can't be afraid to change when something's not working. If you know something's not working, you better start looking and trying to figure out what it is. And I always tell guys, if you do 90% of your shooting in practice, you'll find 90% of your problems in practice.
That's a great point. And we talked about a little bit, kind of, I kind of gave you some notes as far as what we were going to talk about. But a big thing is, and you had mentioned, you forgot to set your windage, which is, good for amateurs to see that even the pros forget the little things that we all on the amateur level do as well. But what type of takeaway like that? I mean, you have a lot of wins in there. What do you take away from little things like that in a tournament that's not necessarily a victory? Items like that. What do you take on to the next one?
Absolutely. The last ASA at London, I missed a shoot off by 2 points. And I come out the second day just guns a-blazing, and I hit 312s right in a row, and I reached up to set my sight on the 4th shot, and my scope was loose. For some reason, I didn't have the screw that mounts the scope on tight, but anyway, it was a half turn loose, so I turned it loose, and I made a big mistake of not taking an equipment failure right there and going to the bags. And I 12 the next target, but then I shot 8s on the next 3 because I'm shooting the upper 12, and I ended up, it made me a yard off. And like I said, you can't take risks. One thing that the top pro level guys do is they don't take risk. Or you shouldn't. We still do it from time to time. Don't let down on a shot when we should, and when you can't see what you're aiming at, or you don't know exactly where you are on the target, things like that. But you have to take away the fact that you've got to make mistakes in order to understand the value of them. Because if you value that arrow enough, you're not gonna shoot it without anything other than 100%, effort on it. So, I made a mistake, got a little bit of a tongue lashing from my wife over it. She seems to think I spend enough time with archery that I should never make a mistake.
Yeah, but even the best make a mistake here and there.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. I mean, I'm sure stuff loosens up a little bit more on my bows and my sights and everything because of the draw length and the amount of energy being released. But, you just got to, I was going through my OPA bow last night and just putting Loctite where I felt like it needed it. And, I found a problem that would have seriously cost me some serious money next weekend at OPA. And it was kind of one of those things that it was a new part on my site that they had sent me that was just a reinforced part just because I had an original prototype and it hadn't caused me any problems, but I'm glad I went over it because I found a crack where it would have broken on me. So I, again, that's just a lot of this stuff is just simple self-discipline and just taking the time, not taking risks. Guys have a loop that breaks on them or something because they risked it too long. Most equipment problems you can just put right back on the shooter because you're the mechanic.
Yep.
You either didn't take the time or you were sloppy with your approach to it. So, and you can't. That's one of the reasons too. A lot of the top pros, they get one bow running, they'll just put a new arrow on it, retune it week for week.
Right.
Just so. I don't. I don't like to do that myself, but. There's too many different things that you change that will change how an arrow's tuned. And I spend a lot of time tuning my arrows into the same hole. And, every little change you make to a bow can dynamically change that. And you can't afford mistakes.
Yeah, that is definitely true. When $12,500 is on the line from in contingency, you definitely don't want to do that.
It's everything. By the time the weekend's out, with all your little, contingency payments and the tournament wins, I mean, it's a $20,000 weekend. So
right.
Once you've won one of those, you realize what it does for you, and it's kind of getting to work a little bit harder at it.
It does. We have a couple questions coming in, and I think this is one that I've personally I've asked this one to you before. And I think we get this every time we do an interview with you is Jimmy Wilson is asking, how do you keep from holding low on the target? And I think this is an issue that has affected everybody at one point or another, I believe.
Well, holding low is usually a combination of things. Now, every grip design, where the grip is in relationship to the center line of the bow has a little bit of effect on that. But what you find most of the top shooters do is they will move when they're initially setting the bow up, and we've figured this out with the Bowtechs, is that, I always teach guys to start with the bottom of the arrow at the top of the burger hole. That's about the height that you're going to get the proper leverage from the loop. Okay, so the loop is loop height is leverage. If you get your draw length too long, and sometimes you're talking a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch in adjustment, you will start to sag out the bottom because you don't have enough leverage to hold your stabilizer weight up. So, and I caught myself doing that quite a bit early on this season, and every time I missed, it was out the bottom. So I got a good friend in Argentina, Pablo Mayo, that when I was down there this winter, he was showing me how he was really heavily back weighting his stabilizers. So, I'm going to try that. And I did. I heavily back weighted my stabilizers where I'm running 8 ounces in the front now, and I'm running 28 ounces in the rear. So it gives me almost just a slight pull down in the back, and I don't miss out the bottom near as much as I used to. Again, you got to stay hard in the wall. That's there's always so many different ways to set a bow up. I mean, we can take these bows and run them from 14 pounds of holding weight all the way up to 22. So there's a mirage of different ways to set it up to for your own personal take. But if you're running 75, 80% let off, you're only holding 14 pounds. You better get that leverage and stabilization working for you because you don't have a lot of holding weight to kind of help with that. So
right.
You really got to stay hard up against the back wall in order to accomplish that. So first thing I would look at loop height. Get that loop higher up on the bowstring, move the rest up with it. And if you'll just start with the bottom of the arrow at the top of the burger hole, that's going to help you an awful lot.
Good point. Good point. I tried that myself when you recommended that, and it's definitely helped me. So that's a great. We have a lot of good comments coming in too. Looks like you've helped quite a few people over this weekend. Derek Nestor, who is on our shooting staff, I believe, said thanks for the tip with the cables. Worked great in Indiana. So I'm sure it's one of the. I'm sure you probably remember Derek. So. Let's see. We got quite a few things.
But I told you.
Mr. Rico Von Tonder, I think you knew Rico on our staff. He says, Tim, you're a true inspiration. Well done, man. Super proud to be a teammate.
Yeah, he's coming on big down there in New Zealand. He's really turning on, seeing some of the scores he's been shooting. You know, it's hard for guys that live clear remote like that, but then there's guys like us that want to go there, right?
That's true. That is true. Not necessarily target shoot, but hunt, right?
Yeah, no kidding. That's one of my dreams. So
absolutely. And you got a guy that needs to hook you up right there. Hint, hint, Riku. I mean,
yeah, he's invited. He's invited a few times. So I just gotta. It's just a long plane ride, for God's sake.
It's not like you have a ton of time, right?
If you had legs like these, you wouldn't want to sit in an airplane that long.
I bet. Get the exit rows, right?
Oh boy.
Well, let's walk us through Bloomington. Take us through each day, kind of, you know, the progress and some hurdles, some things that might have got inside your head a little bit, maybe.
At Bloomington, I come out pretty strong. First day, I shot really good. I had 1.8. You know, it was kind of my nemesis target. You know, the little Wolverine. You know, and again, it was one of those non-committal shots. You know, I was a couple yards off on it, but I wasn't 100% committed, so I probably shot it a little bit soft, ended up out the bottom. So, in fact, that's really how the 3/8 I shot, almost all of them are identical. You know, a couple yards soft on yardage and just kind of not committed 100% to the shot, and that can kill you in IBO. I mean, that's a 6-point swing in IBO. That's just to the 10 ring. If a guy shoots an 11, you know, that's a 3-point swing per target. So it's really hard to make up errors, 8s and 5s, especially. 5 was just almost detrimental. But, you know, and you know, these guys are my teammates too. I mean, Joby and Levi, you know, come in in second and third place. You know, they were the top dogs at the first one, and Joby's been shooting just exceptionally well. I mean, the guy just come out hard on Sunday and hit 8 out of 10 and then missed one and hit another one. I was just like, he's unstoppable. And but you just got to stick with it. You just got to go out there and try to 12 every target and stop thinking about the overall score. And in fact, it was about the time I shot my last 8 with 4 to go that somebody, I knew, you can kind of keep track in your mind. You know, I knew he was getting close to me. And that starts when you're the guy in the lead. That's a hard thing to deal with, because last year him and Joby, or Levi and Joby, did the same thing to me there. I led the first day, and they walked me down and stomped me into the dirt, you know. And they had the momentum, and that's a hard thing to break, you know. So we got done with that 16th target, and I had shot an 8, and now somebody piped up and told me, well, yeah, he was 1 point ahead of you right there. I'm like, oh, crap, now I'm 4 behind. So now, but the difference is now everybody knows the score. Joby knew the score, and I'm sure, you know, they probably won't admit it, but it bothers them too. I mean,
right.
You shoot better if you really, I try to keep the score in the background. I don't really want to know the score. I want to just be able to shoot and try to 12 or 11 every target.
Yep.
And, you know, we get to the next target. It's a long-standing bear on first, and I really knuckled down and tried to get the shot, you know, but it was a bomb. You know, I was just more afraid of an 8 than anything. But I had, you know, at this point, I got 3 targets left. I mean, I got to hit some 11s and just hope something happens. I know we got a turkey left, which anything can happen. And that's kind of what I told myself. I said, just do your job. We have a turkey coming. Anything can happen. Somebody can shoot a 5.
Right.
And we don't even know what Levi's doing in the second group, so he could pass us all if you don't pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
So I shoot a 10 there, and Joby shoots an 8. Now we're in, you know, and I think, you know, he got himself down to his 3rd letdown, which I don't like to get to that position, because mentally it starts to mess with you, you know, because you have to force a shot at that point. You can't let down.
Mm-hmm.
And, he shot an 8, and then we get to the next target. I have the luxury of going last now, and it's the turkey. It's a beast turkey, man. It's a 40-yard turkey, and first 2 guys up shoot an 8. Well, that's Joby shot an 8. So now I'm thinking all I got to do is to 10 it. I think I have him by 11 count, but I don't know for sure. I said, but if I can get the 11 here, I think I can win the tournament. And Tommy Gomez pinwheels the 11, absolutely dead centers it with an X cutter. So there's not a lot of room left in it. But his arrow leaned to the side, and when I glassed it, I could see it. I could see it slenching across the top of the 11, and I just cut a half a yard and aimed right at it, and Robin Hooded his arrow. So it was a big moment, and I knew it right then. I'd probably stuck it out unless Levi, had just a ridiculous day.
Right.
We had a pretty good lead on.
Which Levi's known to have ridiculous days in the past, right?
Yeah, that's not uncommon. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we get the last target, and it was a long shot, and I just end it for the win. So, and sometimes you don't win on your very best performances, and I've always struggled with that because I know how well I can shoot, but I want to shoot to my ability and win, and it's not always that way, and you have to be happy with shooting good enough to win, I guess you'd say.
Mm-hmm.
The field's tough. I mean, we're always our harshest critics,
Right.
But if you practice at a level that's, phenomenal, so that you can win on your bad scores, and that's really the level you have to practice at. And a lot of people, I think they take their practice sessions for granted, and you've got to get your practice to a level where you're just basically compressing the high highs and the low lows.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that about practice because Bob Phillips, first he said you've been a wealth of knowledge and he appreciates the advice over the past year since he switched over to Bowtech and Gold Tip. He's also asking what type of practice advice do you recommend? And I know that can be pretty broad, but what are some of the core practice tips you could give them?
Well, I spend the majority of my time working on equipment, getting my equipment 100%. I won't go out and shoot unless my arrows are all shot in, unless I know they're at least shot in through paper, because that takes out about 95% of the flyers and gets me about 95% same hole accurate. But I like to be 100% prepared, which means getting my arrows shot in on the shooting machine. It doesn't always happen. But my IBO arrows, like for example, I shot them just in through paper, and it seemed to be very adequate. The nice thing about IBO is you don't have to spend that much time because you can always pull 3 or 4 arrows out of the 1-inch dot at 50 yards and go shoot the tournament with them. When you go to an ASA tournament, you have to have. I always keep a set of arrows for the shoot off, okay? Because I don't want to shoot arrows that I've shot all weekend and they've been banged around and I don't know if they got a ding here or a ding there, But it gives you a level of confidence going to a shoot off with 5 arrows that shoot in the same arrow hole, and you don't have to guess whether they got smacked or knocked in it or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
As far as practice goes, it really depends on the venue that I'm going to. Okay, I'm looking at OPA this weekend, and I'm deciding myself that probably the key skill set that I'm going to need to win that tournament is having accurate cuts. Okay, and so I've spent a little bit of time, trying to get out on the mountain as much as I can and just test cuts, test angles, test some of my old data on it, and just compile very accurate cut charts that I can go to very quickly. If I am practicing for IBO, on the other hand, I'm going to take I normally will shoot my 3D practice for unknown exactly the same way. I'll take a book. I always keep track of my score. I didn't get much chance to do that last week, so I just went out and shot whatever I could. It was kind of haphazard. But normally when I'm practicing for a 3D event, I will score 10 target sets or 20 target sets. I'll write the animal down. I'll write the yardage I judged it for. Then I'll write my first arrow and second arrow. So I'll usually shoot an arrow unknown and an arrow known. That tells me a couple things. It tells me how good am I judging yardage. And it tells me, can I make the shot once I do have the yardage? Plus, it also helps me aim around arrows. Some of the other practice I've been doing for known art 3D is, and let's go back to that other one real quick because I need to finish up on that. Sure. So when I get done with a 10 target set, which is typically what, kind of how we break down IBO or a 20 target set, then I know what kind of scores I can expect out of myself. And I try to shoot a short, medium, long target on all. I shoot 3 arrows at a time, so 6 arrows in a set before I pull arrows. So I'll do a short, medium, long until I get done. And I try to challenge myself and just work on the targets I'm tough on or hard on. But it teaches me, where I need to practice. So I need to practice yardage more. Do I need to practice shooting more? If I'm having a shooting problem, my sight tape's off. Whatever. Go back and it teaches you what you need to work on. If I'm shooting yardage, on the other hand, I spend 0 time judging yardage, so I can spend a lot more time really making sure my sight tapes are perfect, working on my shot execution. One of the drills that I do for known yardage is I'll take one 3D target and I will stand at 30 yards with 4 arrows, uppers and lower 12s, until I can hit all 4 12s with all 4 arrows. So, because it's hard sometimes to aim around arrows, and you have to teach yourself how to do that and train yourself how to do it. We all get in situations that we're not comfortable with, and you have to face them directly on and get your confidence up so that you can handle anything that's thrown at you. And I'll back up to 35 or back up to 40, and then I'll back up to 50. And if I can hit 3 out of 4 12s at 50, I think that's acceptable. But when you're getting 1 out of 12, that's when you really got to. A lot of times it's just focus, but it really fine tunes and tells you your sight marks are perfect and your arrow flight and your forgiveness of your setup is spot on.
Right. Well, and while you were going through that too, I had a thought too, and I definitely didn't want to forget a shout out to the female pro winner, Erin McGladdery, as well. So not only did we win the men's pro class, but also won the ladies pro class. So I believe we have a cool image to share of Erin McGladdery on the podium there with her big win, along with you, I think, the cool image you guys had sent me. So shout out to Erin if you're watching. Great job as always. She just came off a big tournament. I know she was rushing from tournament to tournament as well. So, and I believe we also had a couple wins in the amateur class. Bill Burns, and unfortunately I didn't get Bill's picture in time, but we have Bill Burns actually won the Masters. Is that what class it was? I think you might know, Tim.
Master class bow hunter,
yep.
I think.
Yep. Angela Nestor won Open A in the ladies, correct?
I think it was FBO.
FBO, I'm sorry, correct, FBO as well. But also we had a great share coming from our own Jeff Cena. He's here in the local area, and he competed at this past weekend's the SoCal Shootout, and he actually took first in the pair division. I don't know if you know Jeff. He's from our local area.
Yes, one of my shooters. Great guy.
He is, and so he just sent that share right before we went live just a little bit ago. I wanted to make sure I was able to share that as well. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I wanted to make sure we shared all this. So
we've got a lot of good shooters. I was up at the World Cup event earlier today. Just talking to guys and talking to some of my shooters and trying to talk to about the attributes of what makes a good bow. What they're having tuning problems with this, and I explained to them, hey, you don't have to have those tuning problems, but this is why you have them, and walking them through, what makes what makes a bow shoot a left hair, what makes a bow shoot a high hair, and so, I just think it's education. We got to teach people why these Bowtech bows are so phenomenally good and why they're so easy to work with and tune.
And that's big. I mean, because I know you get it nonstop. I mean, we were able to follow around when we did the Tim Gillingham project, and I think you get stopped nonstop everywhere you go asking about your bows, why you shoot the bows. I know you and I are always in communication about, people pinging stuff off you. We've got a lot of cool stuff coming up. I know you and I both have a tough time not sharing it because we have such cool stuff coming up. But, kind of tell people why, and why you choose Bowtech. Because, again, you can shoot every bow out there. And I know we hit this pretty hard, but, it's a fact. You can shoot any bow or choose any bow out there. But why do you choose to come on board with us?
Well, part of it was products, part of it was the people. I was real. The CEO at the time, Tom Zelenovich, just a good friend of mine. Knew he was going to do really well at Bowtech, and I always felt like he had a great product. And I've always preached in this industry: it's products, people, and education. This is how you win in this industry. You build the best product in their class. You surround them with good people. Teach people why they're better and how to use them. And if you'll follow that in that order, a company can't go wrong.
Right.
They really can't. But every failed product, you can pretty much see there's a glitch in one of those areas. And, I had a good chance to work with the Shields guys last week. I was up at the Shields training there in South Dakota and got to sit in on all the Bowtech meetings. And I enjoy doing that and be able to, throw, I guess my credibility into the pile and explain to these guys, that, it doesn't have to be difficult, and that Bowtech, you can tune any bow, but what happens is there's a much wider range that you can tune a bow to a shooter with a format like Bowtech uses versus, some of the other systems where you have a very narrow window of tunability to the actual shooter. Due to the fact that we have yokes and flex guards, different weight flex guards that basically reduce the amount of rotational forces and knock travel in the bow. The overdrive binary is just really hard to beat in the world of archery. It's super smooth. Like I said before, this is the best shooting speed bow I've ever had. And yes, the other bows I shot fine. I shot them great. As a good shooter, you're going to make about anything shoot. But some things, are just easier to shoot than others. And if companies will come on board and listen to the top shooters in the sport, I think they'll get from A to Z a lot quicker.
Right. Because
it takes us a while to kind of figure out what we want, because the difference between good and great is very finite. But maybe I like 22 pounds of holy weight, and this other guy likes 16.
Right.
But it takes a while for a shooter to figure out those little anomalies in their own form.
Right.
Pretty hard to beat the platform. I mean, I've set up a couple Realm X's for guys locally, and I just can't get over how phenomenal of a bow that is. And it's what I call, basically a perfect bow. And I'm sure they're just rocking off the shelf from what I hear.
It is, and coming into a new year, I mean, this is the most exciting time of year for us. Is we're getting close to new products time, and coming off, like you said, it's just the advice we get from the pro shooters out there. We can talk about, we can make a bow all day long and what we want to build, but it's about feedback from shooters, from consumers, about what works for them, what doesn't work for them, and that's how we make a better product. So that's why it's such an exciting time for us, because we're coming into July, and fall's coming up fast. People are asking for new bows. I mean, we're excited.
It's a little bit crazy the way this industry does. I mean, it sucks that we really should strive to keep good quality bows in the lineup for 3 or 4 or 5 years, because it takes a little while just to get them out and get people trying them, and why build another bow? Sometimes you gotta keep everything new and fresh, and sometimes we just learn things that are more that are better for the bow, and
sure.
Shooters are always asking for newer, better, greater. Everybody wants new and exciting. So
right, and that's our big thing. Why we don't blitz with 12 new bows every year. I mean, that's and we'll keep them. Why fix what's not broken? And you made a good point, because people just learn the bows the first year, and then they gain steam in years 2, 3, and 4. So that's a great point.
No doubt, it's nice. I mean, I'm shooting the same exact bows I shot last year. it's actually an advantage for me to shoot the same bow over and over again. They're just ultra reliable now. I know exactly how to set them up and where to set them up, and I can just be real turnkey from bow to bow to bow.
Sure. Bob Phillips had another good question for you, and I know a lot of people think this. He's asking, what are some tips on getting sponsored, getting on a sponsored team like Bowtech, or just any sponsorship in general, I would say. What are some tips? Because you've been there. You've been the guy that's trying to get sponsored before.
Well, sure. When I first started out, it was just, I approached my dealer. I was like, man, I need to get a new bow, but I can't really afford to fork out, the money to get the whole thing all at one time. I was in the Army, but I was always at the shop helping out, just doing it for love of the game, and, he volunteered to get me a co-op bow through the shop, and I was just ecstatic, and I appreciated that, and I, always gave back, helped him out in the shop, helped him, do this, do that, I was always there, always helping people on the line. You got to create value around yourself.
Right.
A lot of people think it's just how you shoot. When I look at a resume, I run the staff for Gold Tip. I look at a resume based on a couple criteria. I'm looking for credibility. Okay. And I can look at a resume and pretty much tell how a guy's perceived in his area. If he's a bare bow finger shooter, he's probably not a top level competitor. He might, and I'm not saying anything against bare bow finger shooters. It's just that, I want the freestyle open guy because typically he's probably the best guy for me to have in that area. I want guys that are active with shops. If he's the best shooter in the area, he typically has more credibility. And you're just looking for, you can't put everybody on staff, so you're looking for guys that have a sphere of influence. So if I got I see online all the time, and he's always posting stuff, and he's got a lot of followers, and, that's another avenue. If you got a guy that's running kids programs that are working with kids and teaching them, running through a lot of, kids and teaching them how to use our products the right way the first time, more than likely he's creating customers for us. And so I can get a return on investment with that person. Really, unless you're in the top freestyle men's pro podium, men and women's podiums, there's I look at senior pro guys a lot too, because they have a lot of experience, they have a lot of contacts, they've been in the game for a long time, and I think it's very bad just to dismiss them because they're competing at the same level they competed at 10 years ago, because they still have all those contacts, they still have all that knowledge, and you want them on your staff to help disseminate the message of your company.
Sure.
So
it's
just
your comment about you were appreciative when that dealer gave you that co-op program. That's one thing I see. Unfortunately, sometimes in the industry is people just looking. I shouldn't say a lot, but quite a bit. I mean, there's shooters just looking for the handout. But we're looking at the same thing as you. We're looking for somebody that's active with their dealer. Bob. So I would encourage you, if you've never been a sponsor, connect with your dealer. Volunteer at their shop. That's how I got started. I did my 9-to-5 job, and then after that, I volunteered at my shop. I worked for my product, and that's how I got into it. And it's really, that was my foot into the industry. That supported my shooting, because if that didn't happen, then I wouldn't be able to afford to go shooting. So. Support your dealer. That's the big thing, is get in there, volunteer your time. He'll have events, volunteer the events. And
yeah, I mean, your dealers are where your business is going to, lie,
Yep.
and they're going to probably let you have free time for helping them out. And,
Yep.
and they're going to, some dealers will get really butthurt over staff programs because they've been screwed over when they're not getting a return on investment.
Right.
If you want to volunteer to take flyers out to the local club for a tournament and stuff, the guy wants to, help them out, help them be successful, because if they're not there, if they can't make a living, and I also volunteer and help teach them, learn stuff. They don't always have time to be on the up and up with what's new and hot and hip, and bring that new hot and hip stuff back to them and teach them, how to solve a tuning problem, or a new broadhead that's on the market.
All the stuff they're learning here on Bowtech Live. Get your dealer in watching this stuff.
There's a ton of information out there, on the internet, and you can educate yourself too. I mean, you got to figure out what to filter, for what's good and what's not. But
Right. Yep.
knowledge is power. The more you know, the better off you are.
Yep. No, I love it. That's great. What's next for the Hammer? Where are you headed next? What's the rest of your year look like?
We jump on a plane first thing in the morning, head to OPA, which again I think it's going to be a phenomenal event. A lot of people, I think are, down and out on it, but I still think it's the very best venue in archery. I think the way it was originally set up is the best way to run it, and kind of keep it as kind of the PGA of archery.
Right.
This top level event, and if you only get 100 pros, open it up for anybody else that wants to play. There's a lot of good amateur shooters out there that can play. And I remember when I was 25 years old, I reveled in the chance to be able to pit myself against Randy Ulmer. I probably wasn't going to beat him, but I wanted to see where I was at, And, that's what you have to do if you want to get to the top. You have to get out there and see these guys. You got to see them at their good, and you got to see them at their worst, so that you start to humanize them and don't hold them too high, in high esteem, so that you start to develop a complex that you can't beat them, because you can't. There's a lot of very good amateur shooters out there, and you're never going to get better by just staying, where you're at. So I always tell guys to try to get out and if you can afford to shoot in the top level class, do it, because you're going to get to the top a lot faster. After that, we go to Metropolis for the last ASA before the Classic, and after that, it's my 49th birthday, so I think I got one tournament in July, and I just told my wife yesterday, I think I'm going to back off on the Field Nationals. It's just too much, and I need a break, and she needs a break.
She's had a break for all year, no.
I've gone an awful lot, and it's hard on.
It is. No, but I was just checking the weather out of the OPA. It looks like you might get a little wet, so judging by the. You
never know on that mountain. You got to be prepared for everything, and there's lots of little for shooting in the rain, and some of my best tournaments have come in a downpour all day. So if you're prepared for it, and you just got to be prepared. You got to go with stuff to clean your scopes and stay under an umbrella. Things slow down a little bit up on that mountain. You're probably going to want a rain gear, because when it rains, it's probably going to get pretty cool. But you just got to, I'll do things like in the rain, I'll put turtle wax on my arrows. And that may sound a little crazy, but if you take a triple X, for example, and you dip it in a puddle and you shake it off, it'll weigh about 5 grains more. If you put turtle wax on it and do the same thing, you got about a half a grain.
Wow.
To a grain. And as soon as you fire, that water will beat off in there and not affect the downrange, velocity quite as much. So there's lots of little things, Sometimes I may go a little bit too far, but that just gives me a sense of preparedness and a sense that of confidence that I'm doing everything within my power to put myself in a position to win.
Well, that's great. I mean, that's a tip that I know probably nobody's ever really heard on the amateur side, unless you've told them in your travels. But
some of the guys that hang around the trailer get it, They may think I'm crazy. You got to keep your sight tapes covered up. You got to use a laser jet printer to print your sight tapes instead of an inkjet, because then they won't run even if they do get wet. Got to be prepared.
Right. Well, and there's, and I feel bad because there's one guy that I left out when we were talking about our wins this weekend, and unfortunately he hadn't got. I haven't received any pictures from him, but it's Damogoy Budin out in the Pro Series, tied for second place.
Yeah.
I think
I just saw him this morning.
Oh, did you? Yeah. I'd reached out to him for some images, but I figured he might be traveling around out there. So.
Yeah, up at the World Cup. So. But yeah, that's a tough field, and I heard the course in Germany was probably as tough as they've ever seen. I love the Europeans. They definitely, have a piece of my heart in the way they set up courses. There's no whiners over there. I remember a lady
Right.
one time, the Wales was blowing sideways and raining, and they were complaining about it. And a lady turned to Dom's dad and was like, "Hey, it's Wales." So quit whining.
Yeah.
So, but that those courses challenge you. They challenge your knowledge. They challenge you as a shooter. But I love that about it. To me, I love technical archery. I'm not as good, I guess, at pure mental archery like FIDA or indoor.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's really what it is. It doesn't take a lot of archery skill to shoot indoor or even FIDA at 50 meters. But it takes a lot of mental skill. And
Right.
My wife just sent me a message. "You cut your hair so short."
Again, the Texas. So she hasn't seen you since you returned?
No, I think I'm a haircut at lunch.
Oh, gotcha. That's funny. Well, Brian Caston I left our whitetail picture up here for a reason, but Brian Caston is asking, do you have any cool hunts scheduled coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always wanted to take my wife and my dad on a elk hunt, and so we decided, hey, we're going to put in for Arizona this year, and lo and behold, we drew our first year putting in. So
Wow.
I'm pretty excited about that. I just, my dad's 75, so he'll be shooting a crossbow. Got him a little
Nice.
Excalibur Grizzly, and pretty deadly with it. So
Good.
hopefully I, drag my wife along. She doesn't seem overly excited about it, but she'll have fun when she gets an elk bugling right in front of her. So,
Oh, yeah.
and then Dave Stepp, he's gonna
Yeah.
help me scout the area. It's just outside of his home, and Dave's killed some tremendous bulls
Mhm.
over there. And actually, he's headed to OPA with me in the morning. So
Oh, nice.
coming up Thursday, so we're all staying together, and his wife's been beating him up, making him build a deck on the house. So
You got to do home time stuff. You got to do the honey-do list, right?
yeah,
Well, the reason I asked that, Tim, is all those of you that are watching, you may be aware, and I really hope you are, because a few weeks ago we launched a all-inclusive sweepstakes, a trip to hunt in Colorado for an elk. So it's on Bowtech, and it's going to be out there with Nate Zielinski. So we launched that, I think it was roughly 2 weeks ago, but this past Thursday, we added something really, really cool to that. So if you haven't checked it out, we are giving away an all-inclusive whitetail hunt to Illinois with Mike Stroff from Savage Outdoors and The One. We're going to make it super, super simple for you to join. All you need to do is text the word HUNT to 77453. You can get in there and you can enter both of the sweepstakes. You can only win one. But you get an opportunity to get in there and enter that. So it's a pretty cool opportunity. Everything's on Bowtech. So basically, we'll get you there. We'll feed you. We'll take care of your tags. We're even going to hook you up with a bow, decked out, ready to go. All the accessories. We might have to work with Tim and hook you up with some arrows and all that fun stuff. So we got to get you.
Yeah, we got Nate hooked up with some good gold tips now. He's got a sheep tag this year. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, him and Ryan Johnson. I don't know if you know Ryan. Ryan's going to be out there as well. So one of our other Bowtech staff shooters. So make sure you guys get in there and text that HUNT to 77453 for both of these great opportunities, because it's an epic trophy hunt. None of us can enter. I know Nolan, our AV, and our designer, graphic designer, we're talking about every day. We wish we could join in. Unfortunately, Tim can't even enter this contest. But what was that? We lost you there for a second.
I said I got plenty to do. I plan on going hunt mule deer early November, and then I'm going to go hunt coos deer down in Arizona hopefully around Christmas time.
Well, that's good. Good. Get some mental health breaks out there, right? Well, buddy, I appreciate you joining us. It was great to be able to catch up with you before you were on to OPA and catch you a little downtime and catch up with you a little bit. So great work this weekend as always.
Well, I appreciate it, Todd.
Cool,
we'll keep putting Bowtech on the podium, I hope. So.
We'll be watching. I'll keep track of you this weekend at OPA. I'm sure we'll be in text contact all weekend long. So.
All right, sounds good.
Those of you that are watching, I appreciate you joining us on Bowtech Live again here on Target Tuesday. Make sure you text that HUNT to 77453. Get in there and get entered in those cool sweepstakes, because again, this is a epic trophy hunt, so you definitely don't want to miss out. So make sure you join us the rest of the week. We've got some great stuff coming up with Randy Newberg, and tomorrow Chef Collins is going to be doing his wild to table. I think he's doing some wild bear dishes as well, so it's going to be great opportunities. So make sure you're in there. Check it all out all week long. Until next week, make sure you have fun and shoot straight.